All right, today we're diving into one of the greatest minds in all of history, Archimedes of Syracuse. We're talking about a mathematician, a physicist, an engineer, an inventor whose ideas were so far ahead of their time, they honestly felt like they came from the future. Give me a place to stand and I will move the earth. I mean, what a statement. It's one of the most famous, most confident quotes in the entire history of science. But what kind of person, what kind of mind could make a claim that bold? Well, let's get into the story of the man behind that boast, a true genius whose work would change the course of science forever. You know, our story doesn't start with a giant lever ready to move planets. No, it starts in a much smaller, much more familiar place, a bathtub. And it's probably the most famous aha moment anyone has ever had. So here's the deal. King Hiram II of Syracuse had this beautiful new golden crown made, but he had this nagging feeling. He suspected the goldsmith had cheated him by mixing in cheaper silver. So he turns to Archimedes and says, "Figure this out for me." This just breaks down his thought process so perfectly. It's classic Archimedes. He goes from this simple, everyday thing, seeing the water level rise in his bath, to this brilliant, totally non-destructive scientific test. See, because the fake crown had lighter silver mixed in, it had to be bulkier to have the same weight, so it pushed more water out of the way. And the legend is, he was so thrilled by this breakthrough that he leaped out of the bath and ran through the streets, stark naked, yelling his discovery to the world. Now, while that bathtub story is absolutely legendary, a lot of scholars, including huge names like Galileo, thought Archimedes probably used an even more precise method based on this exact principle. He could have just taken the crown and an equal weight of pure gold, balanced them perfectly on a scale in the air, and then dunked the whole setup in water. The fake, less dense crown would float up a bit more, tipping the scales and revealing the fraud. Pretty clever, right? So, who was this guy who saw the world in such a revolutionary way? To really get his genius, you have to look at where he came from, his early life and his education. You see, Archimedes wasn't just some random stroke of luck. He was born right into the center of the ancient world's intellectual scene. His family was powerful in Syracuse. His dad was an astronomer, and he was even buddies with the king. Then he was sent to study in Alexandria, Egypt, which back then was like going to Harvard, MIT, and Oxford all at once. And his genius wasn't just locked away in his head for abstract problems. A lot of his work was about solving real-world, practical issues for a city. For example, King Hiram built this enormous ship, the Syracusia, but it had one major flaw. It leaked a lot. So Archimedes designed this incredibly elegant machine, basically a giant screw inside a pipe, to lift water out of the ship's hull. It works so well that variations of the Archimedes screw are still used today for irrigation and all sorts of things. But Archimedes' brainpower wasn't just for peacetime construction projects. Oh no. During the Second Punic War, when the unstoppable Roman army came to lay siege to Syracuse, his mind became the city's greatest and most terrifying weapon. Ancient historians wrote about these fearsome war machines that defended the city, and one of the most famous was the Claw of Archimedes. Just try to picture it, a massive crane with a giant grappling hook that could reach over the city walls, literally grab a Roman warship, hoist it up out of the water, and then either flip it over or just smash it into the rocks. Can you even imagine the absolute terror of the soldiers on that ship? And that brings us to his most legendary weapon, the heat ray. The story goes that he used a whole bunch of polished bronze shields as mirrors to focus sunlight into a single beam and set Roman ships on fire from a distance. So, myth or reality? Well, the jury's still out. Some experiments have shown it's technically possible, but shows like Mythbusters found it was really, really hard to do. The truth is, even if it couldn't reliably set a whole ship ablaze, the sheer psychological terror of a blinding beam of light that could start small fires would have been an incredible weapon in itself. But here's the wild part. For all these incredible world-changing inventions, Archimedes himself kind of thought of them as distractions. His real passion, the thing he truly loved, was beyond the physical world. It was in the pure, perfect, and infinite realm of mathematics. He developed this super powerful technique, which was basically a sneak peek at integral calculus, centuries before it was officially invented. The idea was to trap a curved shape, like a circle, between two polygons that had more and more sides. By doing that, he could calculate its area with mind-boggling accuracy. And his work on pi is the perfect example of this method in action. He squeezed the circle between two polygons. He started with simple hexagons, then kept doubling the number of sides, again
and again until he was dealing with 96-sided polygons. By calculating the perimeters of those ridiculously complex shapes, he trapped the true value of pi in a smaller and smaller gap.
So what did he find? His final calculation proved that pi was a little bit more than 3 and 10^71, but a little less than 3 and 1/7. And that gives us the number we all remember from school, 3.14. This was the most accurate value of pi the world would see for over 1,000 years. And get this, he did it all without computers, without calculators, without even the concept of the number 0. Just incredible.
Despite his brilliant defense of Syracuse, the city, well, it eventually fell to the Romans. Archimedes' life came to a tragic and deeply ironic end. But his ideas, his legacy, that would turn out to be immortal. Even as his city was being conquered, with chaos and violence all around him, Archimedes' focus never wavered. The Roman general in charge, Marcellus, actually gave specific orders to spare the great thinker. But in the confusion of the invasion, a soldier stumbled upon him, totally absorbed in a geometry problem he'd drawn in the sand. When Archimedes refused to be disturbed, the soldier killed him.
"Do not disturb my circles." Those are said to be his last words. And you know, even if that's just a legend, it perfectly captures who he was. A mind so completely dedicated to the search for knowledge that even the violent fall of his own city was just an annoying distraction. He didn't want his war machines or his inventions carved on his tombstone. Not at all. He believed his greatest achievement was a purely mathematical proof. He showed that the volume and surface area of a sphere are exactly 2/3 of the cylinder that it fits perfectly inside. He was so proud of that single discovery, he asked for a sphere and a cylinder to be carved on his tomb. And what a legacy it is. His writings were rediscovered during the Renaissance, and they basically fueled the scientific revolution, influencing guys like Galileo and Newton. Centuries later, they found some of his lost works hidden underneath the text of a medieval prayer book. Today is Faces on the Fields Medal, which is like the Nobel Prize for math, and his name is literally on the moon, with a crater and mountains named after him. So in the end, what Archimedes really teaches us is that the most powerful tool we have isn't some giant lab or a massive budget. It's curiosity, it's observation, it's just relentless focus. This is a man who found universal laws of physics in his bathtub and calculated the size of the universe with diagrams in the sand. His story is just this powerful reminder that the next world-changing idea might not come from a complex algorithm, but from really looking at the world around us and having the courage to simply ask, why?